Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today I am going to be doing something that I haven't done in a very long time. I did like way back in like maybe the beginning of this year. I did a video called Books I Don't Talk About Enough. And so I just talked about some of my favorite books that I don't really talk about on my channel for whatever reason. So yeah, it's just kind of bringing light to books that I really like but I never talk about. So I'm going to be doing that video again today. The first book I have on here is We Are Okay by Nicola. This is actually just the dust jacket because my roommate is borrowing this book right now, so I have the dust jacket only. This book is about a girl named Marin who discovers some things that she wasn't exactly super happy about with her family, and ever since that day that she discovered them, she's not talked to anybody in her family since she discovered those things, and she moved really far away to go to college. The book takes place within a short period of time while she's on the college campus during Christmas break, and everybody's gone because it's Christmas break, but she's there, and her friend from her old life comes to visit her, and so she doesn't want to talk about the things that happened that made her leave, but like those things get dredged back up because her friend from her old life is visiting her. Although it does take place in a short period of time, I think a couple days, there's a lot of like flashbacks to the part of her life that she didn't want to talk about and she doesn't want to remember. So like you as the reader get to learn about the thing she wanted to leave behind. I read this book last Thanksgiving. I was actually in California when I read it because we went to California last Thanksgiving. And I read it on audio and I loved it. And so I bought it a copy, and also I just love the cover. It is so cute and it's just beautiful. Also I know the inside of the cover of the book itself is also beautiful. Again, I don't have the book with me, so I can't show you. The next book I have here is Crash by Lisa McMann. This sort of encompasses the whole Visions trilogy, so I do have all three books, but I just grabbed the first one for convenience. So Lisa McMann is one of my favorite authors. She wrote the Wake trilogy, which I talk about all the time, but for some reason I never really talk about this series. I read this series earlier this year and I loved it. So the first book follows this character named Jules, who works at her family's restaurant. She kind of has a crush on the son of the family who owns their rival restaurant. That's a little bit of a dramatic part there, but the main storyline of this book, sorry I'm kind of burying the lead, but the main storyline is that one day Jules starts to see this vision of this car crashing into a building and the building exploding. And at first she's just like, what? That was weird. Okay, maybe I'm like hallucinating or something. Like she doesn't think anything of it, but she keeps seeing it happen more and more as it gets closer to when it's going to happen. And she's like, oh my gosh, people are gonna die. I need to figure out what to do to save these people because if I know what's happening, I should help stop it. So this book mostly follows her trying to figure out how to stop her vision from coming true. In the next two books in the series, the vision gets passed on to other people, and I really like that aspect of it because while Jules is the main character in all three of the books, this one obviously it's happening to her, but in the other two books she's seeing it happen to people that she knows, and she's like I know what you feel like, that she's just trying to help them get through it. I don't know what I'm trying to say anymore, but I really liked the variety of ways that the visions are seen throughout the series, if that makes sense. Okay, the next book we have here is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. So this book is interesting. So there is a movie based off this book. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's also called Annihilation. It has Natalie Portman in it. And it is sort of like a thriller. I wouldn't call it a horror movie, but it's definitely like a thriller sci-fi, and it's very intense. And I love that movie. My boyfriend's roommate, Brian, introduced me to that movie, and I was like, oh my gosh, this movie's amazing. I love it so much. I want more. And he's like, well, there is a book that this movie is based off of. It's actually a series. There's 3 books. And I was like, oh, I need this book. And Brian actually ended up buying the first book for me. He put a little thingy in the front cover. So I actually read it during the reading rush. It was part of my TBR. It is interesting. It's very different than the movie, and honestly think I would like this book more if I hadn't seen the movie beforehand. So, like, also keep that in mind in case you're interested in reading the book. But I still think that they're both good in their own right. I would not say this is my favorite book, but it is a book that I think about a lot. Basically, the premise of Annihilation, both the book and the movie, is that there is this thing called the shimmer that, like, okay, so this meteor hits a lighthouse and it creates this thing called the shimmer. And the shimmer is like this barrier thing that the government has been sending teams of people in to investigate what is going on in there, and like nobody returns. And so it's very like interesting, spooky, mysterious. And so the main character in Annihilation, she goes in with a team of people. And in the book specifically, because here's where the book and the movie differ, so I'm going to be talking about only the book from this point forward. In the book specifically, she's in a group, I think, of 4 people, including her, and none of them have names, which I thought was really interesting. So the main character is a biologist, and then there's also an anthropologist, a surveyor, a psychologist, who is the like leader, and then the main character who's a biologist. They're kind of trying to just like collect data about what is inside of the shimmer, so then they can understand it more. And so they find this tower and they go in and investigate it, and there is some really weird stuff going on in this tower. And I don't want to tell you what it is because I don't want to spoil you, because I think that that is the biggest thing that when I read this book I was like, oh, all right. It was just like so different and unique and mind-boggling that I was like, okay, this is a thing that's happening. I have like no words to describe this book because it's like literally I can't, like, it's just, you just gotta read it, you have to experience it for yourself. I have a hard time describing this book, so I'm sorry about that. But yeah, this book is interesting and the movie is phenomenal, so you should at least check out the book or the movie, like just one of them. It doesn't have to be both. But yeah. Okay, the next book I have here I just recently read, and it broke me. And that book is Those Girls by Chevy Stevens. I believe this is an adult book. I picked it up not knowing that it was an adult book. I thought that it just sounded cool, and I feel like the cover looks like young adult. Does it look young adult to you? I feel like this picture looks young adult. But also, I don't know if this is accurate, but I always think that adult books, the like name of the author is like the same size or bigger than the title on adult books, but on young adult books it's usually the author is small and the title is bigger. I don't know if that's an accurate assumption, but so I guess that the author's name and the title are the same size, so maybe I should have thought that it was an adult book. But this book follows these 3 sisters who live with their father, who is very abusive and kind of an alcoholic and is not a good father, and they just work very hard on this farm so that they can have money because they're very poor, and their father just does not provide for them like very much at all, and like these girls just work their butts off because they don't have any money. So one day some things with their father go very, very wrong, and I'm not going to tell you what it is because I don't want to spoil you, but so the 3 of them are on the run away from their father. Along the way, as they're trying to run away, their car breaks down, and then some more bad things happen. So there are so many bad things that happen in this book. I had to like put it down. Like I was reading it on audio, and I was just listening to it because I didn't have anything to do. I was kind of just like chilling in my bed, listening to the audiobook, and I was like, oh, okay, and like I like had to put it down. I'm like, oh, in my mind, like it was very intense. So I mean, eventually I did pick it back up, and I will say that the second half of the book is not as intense as the first half. So if you're reading it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a lot, the second half is not as bad. I literally like don't have words because this book like broke me. Like I feel like I am like scarred from the things that happened in this book. Like I don't know, like there was some very dark, intense things that happened in here. The characters were really, really good, and just the plot, I was like on the edge of my seat the whole time. I was like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? I'm like oh my gosh, I remember a certain part in the first half where my heart was like literally pounding. I'm like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Oh my gosh. And like literally I thought my chest was gonna explode. It was was very, very intense. So yes, a very good book, but again, do be warned that there are some very triggering topics in here involving abuse, rape, sexual assault, all that kind of thing. So just be aware. This book has some very graphic, triggering things that happens in it, but it was so good. Alright, the next book I have here is The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. I read this book earlier this year, and I freaking loved it. I think this is probably the book that has made me cry the most of any book that I've ever read. I think this book made me cry the most. So I'm going to tell you something that's kind of spoilers, but it happens in the very beginning. It's literally on the back of the book, so I'm going to tell you it because it's like the main premise of the whole book. So this book follows a girl named Eden who ends up getting raped by her brother's best friend. And nobody knows that this happened to her. She keeps it very secret. She doesn't want anybody to know. Because she's like holding all these things so deep inside of her, it kind of takes a very big toll on her mental health, on her attitude. She becomes very like devil may care, very rebellious, doesn't really care what she does. She just does what she wants because she has this like emotional turmoil inside of her. It's split into like 4 parts, so like her freshman year of high school, sophomore year, junior year, senior year, and you kind of just go along with her as she's experiencing this emotional turmoil, trying to come to terms with what happened to her. It's very deep, very emotional, and obviously a trigger warning for rape, and there's probably other things in here too, but I just can't remember what they are. It was so good, and I do want to read it again because I loved this book. The next book I have here is The One Memory of Flora Banks by Emily Barr. This book follows the story of a girl named Flora Banks who has amnesia. Basically, she can't really remember like things she does on a day-to-day basis. Like even she'll like do something and like 2 hours later she like won't remember that she did it. And so obviously that's a very hard thing for her to deal with and to live with. But she does have one memory, and that is of her kissing a boy. So she just remembers her kissing this boy named Drake, and she thinks that Drake is the answer to her amnesia. She thinks that if she's with Drake, she'll be able to remember things more, considering the fact that she is able to remember the kiss even several days later. And so her parents actually leave her alone for like a week, and they're like, oh, don't worry, your best friend's gonna take care of you. But her best friend is actually really mad at her, so her best friend doesn't take care of her. And so Flora is left alone in the house, and she like can't really remember what's happening. She like tries to write things down, like she writes notes on her arms and her notebook on like sticky notes, and she's just really struggling being by herself. And eventually she convinces herself that if she finds Drake, then her amnesia will get better. And so Drake actually went to school in Norway, and I do believe she is in like London or somewhere in the UK. And so she flies to Norway by herself. This girl who has amnesia flies to Norway and is trying to find him. And it is a wild ride. It definitely wasn't what I was expecting, especially the ending. The ending was very different than I thought it was going to be. But I really liked this book because Flora is an unreliable narrator, because you don't really know what's happening because Flora doesn't know what's happening. It's kind of hard to figure out exactly what is going on. It was very interesting trying to like piece together what has happened. And I don't know, I just really liked it. Also, I think that this cover is very beautiful. So that is it for all the books that I don't talk about enough. If you guys like this video, please make sure you are subscribed down below so you don't miss any future videos from me. Also, if you want to follow me on social media, all the links are in the description box down below, as they always are. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!